right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Peak Performance Podcast. I'm super excited for our guest today, Gabe Anderson. Gabe, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, yeah, so I was super impressed. I had you, so first of all, thank you for coming out to my lock-in like 2 weeks ago. It's always a big help, when a top producer is willing to come out and pour into your team. But yeah, I had you out there for a training, and I was honestly super impressed by, all the value and stuff that you gave. And a lot of my agents, were very thankful and told me how much, it helped them and it impacted them. So thank you. And then once, when that went so well, you did such a good job. I was like, dude, I got to get this guy on the podcast.
Dude, that's awesome. I appreciate that. I'm glad that I was able to help too.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I mean, let's talk about it, dude. You're gearing up. You're doing 80K here in November, right?
I'm trying. I mean, that's a long shot for me, but it's like double what my best month is.
Yeah.
But I'm putting the numbers in my favor and just kind of hoping that I'm able to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to do a follow-up video and check in, see what we hit, because we're gonna hit the 80K for sure. But yeah, dude, just tell us a little bit about kind of where you came from, what you were doing before, and your first, because I know you kind of had that first year for you was pretty tumultuous.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us that a little bit.
So I came from roofing sales, so I was already in sales before. And I saw this opportunity as something that I was just going to do in the winter time because I had the winters off.
Yeah.
So I was in roofing sales. I did that for a year. I liked it. It was fun. But I saw this as a much better opportunity. So I eventually just made the switch to insurance full time. And that first year was it was with like a different company, and it was pretty tough. It was pretty much just like failing and failing and failing some more. But I knew that there was people out here who were having a lot of success, and I knew that what I found in the insurance opportunity was a great opportunity. Yeah. So that's the only reason I didn't give up. And then when I was able to just work with all the people that we work with and find this group, is really when things started to shift, and I really got to taste that success for myself.
Yeah, definitely. What did that first year look like? Because you touched on it a little bit when you were at the lock-in. But just kind of tell us like that first year.
Yeah. So it was a lot of just nothing, honestly. There was a lot of just failures. So my biggest month was about 8,000. I think I lost in total on like lead spend and everything. I probably lost like close to like $20,000.
Jeez.
Which, if you're in this industry now and you work with us, you know that that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Like you have to really be doing a lot of things wrong.
Yeah.
Which I was doing, and I was luckily I had like money from the roofs where I could kind of experiment on different lead types, different systems, different things. I was essentially just trying to really figure it out on my own. And it cost me a lot of money, and it cost me a lot of headache.
Yeah.
And so eventually I was like, let me just go somewhere where it's plug and play, where I have people and mentors that I can just duplicate, and I trust exactly what they're saying, and then just run it that way. And that helped me so much. It saved me so much time, so much money, and just a lot of like stress to it. It helped me in so many ways.
Yeah, dude, that's perfect, bro. Yeah, when you said that, like, I didn't know that. And when he said that, I'm like, dang, this guy was stayed for a year, was like losing money the entire year and stuck around. Like, that doesn't happen, dude. Agents lose money on one batch of leads and they dip, So that's crazy, dude. But so obviously you went from, and how much did you write that first year?
32,000.
32,000. I mean, that's like
about like 7-8 months.
Yeah, that's like $2K a month. That's like a policy and a half a month, which is insane. So what do you think were like the biggest factors? What are you on? I mean, you're shooting for 80 families this month. What are the biggest factors you think that helped you to go from like that 30K for the year to doing like 20, 30K plus every month?
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of just everything that we normally talk about, right? So like consistency, lead spend, just being disciplined. But quite frankly, even when I was at that other agency, I just didn't really know how to like sell insurance.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Obviously, it seems valuable, but I didn't know how to articulate that value to the client, or them to articulate it to me, like why this is important for them. So there was really no value based on what I was doing from a sales point, like just during that conversation. So when I got around people who were top producers, I realized that there's a lot more to it than just saying certain things. It's how you say it. It's how you ask the questions. So my skill set dramatically got better, and then you pair that with a consistent lead spend and just a consistent schedule, and it's really hard to fail at that point. So those were like the three things there. My skills got better, my lead spend was consistent, and then my schedule as well.
So let's dive into the leads a little bit. So what were you spending before? What are you spending now?
Yeah. So honestly, before I was still spending like a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
That's the reason I was able to kind of lose a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I remember like being on
I love how you say that. Hold on. It's your mindset is so awesome. You're like, that's the reason I was able to lose a lot of it. Like, you're so great. One of the things I really like about you is you're genuinely a grateful guy. And you look at that year and you're genuinely grateful that year happened to you and you lost that 20 or 30 grand. So just you saying, I was able to lose a lot of that money. Like, it's just crazy. People don't think like that.
Yeah, dude, I wasn't thinking like that in the moment. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It was tough. But the reason I stuck around is I knew, man, I was watching people like you. You probably don't even know that, but like I saw the leaderboards, like with you, with all these other top managers. You got Mindy, you have Jonah, you got David, you have like all these people that I just saw on the leaderboards. Gabe Erickson, like every leaderboard. I was just watching you guys, and I knew like because of the success you guys were having, I was like, this is doable. Like there's a reason that I stuck around. But yeah, so I was still spending money on leads. I remember there was a podcast with like a top producer. It was a training.
Yeah.
And I think he was trying to make a point that we don't spend enough on leads. And so he's like, who's spending this much? And I was like, I am. But I was like, making none of it. So it was like, it was tough. Essentially, like, my lead spend became a lot more consistent. And the leads that I was running was the same.
Yeah.
So I used to just buy leads from every different vendor. As soon as someone told me that they were using this vendor, I'd go buy from this vendor. It could be a final expense. It could be a mortgage. It could be an IUL. It could be some type of CRM they're using.
Yeah.
And so I was trying so many things and sticking with none of them.
Yeah.
And as soon as I stuck to one type of lead, which was just mortgage protection, and for a while it was aged mail, and then it became digital. And so once I was able to just stick with one type of lead, one type of like sale, and then I kept my spend consistent. Yeah. So when I first came over to this group, it was about $1,000 to $1,500 a week.
Yeah.
And then I went to my mentor and I said, hey, how do I write this much and this much? He simply said, spend $2,000 to $2,500. And I remember my biggest month at the time, which was November of last year, we laid out a plan. He's like, this is how much you need to spend on leads. This is what your schedule is. And we ran that for the whole month. And then like that was my biggest month. It was like my breakout month, which was awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, and one thing that I really like about you is you're a super genuine guy. Like, and I really appreciate that because there's a lot of people that top producers driving the cars, doing all the things, and then you talk to them and they're not really wanting to help. They're just there for the clout. But like I really don't. And the way you've like tried to help out my agents and spent time with them, it's been super awesome to see. So I just want to say thank you genuinely for that. But let's talk a little bit about you mentioned like your skill set got a lot better because you didn't really spend a lot more on leads. So you said you got a consistent lead type, and then you increased your skill set. And I think the main thing you pointed out was like articulating the value, how to articulate it to the client. So like, what were you doing before when you weren't doing a good job of that?
Again, it just wasn't consistent. So like my script was pretty much a mix of like a bunch of people's scripts, and that would always change with the different lead types. So I was always saying different things. I never really like knew what I was really saying or why I was saying it.
Yeah.
I had like kind of a layout of how my presentation should look. But when I got to the end of every presentation, and like probably 95% of the time they said they need to think about it, I didn't understand why.
Yeah.
I was truly just like guessing every single time and just like hoping.
Yeah.
Like that was literally my mindset in the presentation itself. Every time it was just like, I hope this person just likes this. I hope it's comfortable. I hope it's affordable. And so I was always like switching my scripts. I was always switching the lead types. it was just never consistent. I couldn't really understand what I was doing or why I was doing it, and so it didn't help me at all.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. So now, now that obviously the skill set has gone up a lot, how are you articulating the value to the client? Like, what are you doing? What are you saying? Like, what's the difference now?
So I'm asking a lot more intentional questions. Okay, so I say the same thing pretty much every time now. My presentation's the exact same. So one is the questions that I ask, and I try to get them to pretty much tell me why they want it.
Hmm.
I like running digital mortgage because they fill out the form and it just comes to you instantly.
Yeah.
And so they have a reason in their mind of why they want this. And my job is just to have them kind of explain that to me so I can truly offer them the best solution. And there's a saying where, people want to buy, but they don't want to be sold.
Yeah.
And so I like the easiest way for me to do it is to kind of ask them the questions and then just kind of guide them to the solution.
Yeah.
And that's what's helped me a lot, especially just saying the same things every time. Like I will know now, when the client is in a disagreement or kind of a disconnect, when we're not on the same page, and I know that I can take care of that like right away, as opposed to like moving forward, getting to the end, and then they're like, oh, I need to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. So can we role play that a little bit? Like those intentional questions, kind of like leading them down that path. Can we role play that here?
Yeah. All right. So ring ring.
Hello?
Hey Ryan.
Yeah.
Hey Ryan, this is Gabe. Just wanted to let you know I did just receive that request that you had sent in about paying off your mortgage. If you got sick, disabled, or you passed, that your home would be paid off for you
Okay.
and your beneficiary. Is that correct? Perfect. Now, Ryan, is this your first time going through this, or have you been through it before?
Yeah, I mean, I looked into it a while back. We didn't do anything, but
Okay. Was it just too expensive, or did you not qualify at that point, or was it just not the right time?
I don't think it was the right time.
Okay. Got it. Well, good thing we got your request. Sounds like you want to see some options that would hopefully make sense for you and then your beneficiary as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you've already been through it, so it's pretty simple. I'm just going to ask you a few health questions and a couple financial questions. From there, I'll look at all the companies that would offer you this type of protection. We'll see which one gives you the most benefits at the least cost possible. And then we'll give you a few different options. I'll have you write them down. I'll explain how they work. And then you let me know which one is the most comfortable and affordable. And we'll send a request to the insurance company to see if they would offer you that coverage. Okay. I'm asking the health questions, and I think a big thing that's important when it comes to value is making sure they know exactly what they qualify for. So if we're going through health questions and they're telling me that they have certain conditions, I'm bringing it up right away that, maybe we don't cover the full mortgage, but we'll get you as much as you can comfortably afford. Okay. So we ask the health questions, and then I build a lot of value at the financial inventory. So
okay, so let's talk about how you do that real quick, because I know there's a lot of agents, myself included, that struggle sometimes with getting someone who's like, oh, I want to pay off the full mortgage, and they're 85 years old and had cancer 2 years ago, to, hey, we're going to give you $6,000 whole life, to cover your mortgage payments. So, so what's your word track for like bringing that up when you're asking, like when they tell you, oh yeah, I had cancer 3 years ago? Like what's the word tracks you're using?
So I'm saying, okay, got it. So obviously, Ryan, the insurance companies, they take cancer really seriously. It is a risk for them, as I'm sure you can understand. But don't worry, that does not mean that you don't have options. It just means they're a little bit limited. But as long as you're patient with me, I'm going to make sure we get you the most coverage, the most benefits at the least cost possible.
Okay.
That's what I'll
say
every time.
Really easy, yeah. And I don't know why I never started doing that, bro, because like looking back, if there's the one thing that I struggled with the most throughout my career, like that's probably it.
Yeah.
Getting people to be okay with covering less than the full mortgage. And I don't know why, like I would always just like wait till the end to like drop it on them, but getting out ahead of it makes a lot more sense. So how many people do you think are like, well, I want to cover the full mortgage? Like, do they say that a lot, or?
I think, I like to think that those people can be kind of stubborn.
Yeah.
With the digital mortgage, I think you do get that sometimes. I would say I don't get it a ton, maybe like a percentage, maybe out of all the people that I talk to. Typically they're older. Maybe they've been through the process before and they kind of know they can't get it, but they're just like filling out a bunch of stuff and trying to find out. I would say maybe like 5% of people.
Okay, so it's a really small amount.
Okay. But it happens.
Yeah.
But I think the best way to combat it is just helping them understand what they can get.
Yeah.
Because what they can get is still a lot better than what they have currently.
Yeah.
So just understanding and building the value there and putting more of the focus on that.
Definitely.
Not as a negative thing that they like had to, oh, you can't cover the full mortgage, but we do have this option. But it's like, hey, even though you have these health issues, I'm still going to get you all this type of coverage.
Yeah.
So like, showing it as a benefit and a positive.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's something that I think is really important too, because I think a lot of agents, when they have to give somebody guaranteed issue or an accidental policy or a whole life, they're viewing it from the standpoint of, I offer all these other people this permanent coverage with all these living benefits, or they can get their money back, and now I have to give somebody something that, isn't the best kind of coverage that I offer. So they kind of view it from the, oh no, this isn't the best thing standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you really need to flip your mindset and, like you were saying, understand that like the best coverage for the client is what they can qualify for. So you can't pitch it as like a negative thing, right? Like you were saying, like you gotta find the positive, and incentivize them, to go down that path. Because if you're like, oh well, I can't get you this term that covers the full mortgage for a really cheap price, but I can get you this whole life. You know what I'm saying? Like it. Yeah.
That's why I love digital mortgage, is because there's already some type of intent.
Yeah.
And what I've realized is sometimes it's not even about the mortgage. Sometimes they genuinely just want to leave money for their family. They want to make sure that they're in a better place.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes I just tell them it's not even really about the mortgage. I'm just like, hey, we're going to just leave as much as possible for, your daughter, your son, whoever the beneficiary is.
Yeah.
Because, they're not going to be upset if they receive a check for $50,000 as opposed to $200,000.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. One thing that I heard recently that I started doing that's helped out a lot is a line. I'm trying to think of who Spencer Fagioni. He was at the lock, and I think when you were here, he was here one of the days, and he said this line, and I was like, dude, that's it. He goes to a client. He goes, it's an equity protection type of situation, not going to cover the full mortgage. He's like, hey, Gabe, most of my clients, they're not looking to make their kids rich or anything. They just want to make sure they don't leave behind a burden. Is that the same for you? And every time I've used that or had my agents use it, bro, it works so perfectly, because you're labeling them. You're like, hey, and you're also taking the pressure off of like, hey, I don't want you to spend thousands of dollars, on something like this. But that was a really cool. It's worked like almost every single time. It's been a really good line.
Yeah, dude. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm writing that down.
Yeah,
like that kind of gets me excited. I feel like that definitely would work.
Yeah, and it's like that reverse psychology, or not reverse psychology, but it's where you're like labeling them. You're like, look, I know you're not trying to make them rich, and then it kind of speaks to their concerns, because their concerns are, I'm on as the salesperson. He's going to try to get me the biggest package available.
Yeah.
And make the most amount of money. So it's helped out a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about the financial inventory and bringing that up, which that's super helpful. But so let's go over like the why, the value building when you're in the financial inventory. So where else are you building the value in the financial inventory?
So the financial piece of it, because that's like the whole point. This is a financial protection.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to role play like the questions that I ask, or if you want me to just explain it.
Yeah. Let's role play them. I'm writing notes here.
So, Ryan, how much do you have left on your mortgage?
It's like $112,000.
$112,000?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how much are you paying each month for your mortgage?
$857.
Okay. And do you put any extra to pay it down early, or just what's required?
Just what's required.
Okay. Got it. And then you just want to make sure, sounds like, if something happens to you, you want the home to be pretty much covered for, your beneficiary. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And then, Ryan, do you have anything else that you are going to leave them that essentially they can use to cover this home? Any other financial assets that they can use?
Not really, no.
No. It would just be this plan?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And then this is the big question is like, what are they going to do with the home? So Ryan, what is, your beneficiary? What are they going to do with the home? When something happens to you and they lose, your income and now they have this home, what are they going to do with it? Are they going to move into it? Are they going to sell it, keep it? Do you know what they're going to do with it?
I mean, we've talked about it. I think they would want to keep it, but I guess it just kind of depends. Don't really know for sure.
Kind of depends.
Yeah.
Okay. Just like if they, just what happens at that point where they're kind of at financially. And...
Yeah, I mean, I know one of them would want to live in it, but he has to kind of work it out with the other siblings, as far as whether he's going to buy it or, because I'm going to leave it to all of my kids, not just one of them.
Okay. Got it. And then if we were just like assuming that, and this is not role playing anymore, but if we were just assuming that this type of situation is someone who maybe can't get the full mortgage covered, because I think those are sometimes harder.
Yeah.
That's a great way to pivot to equity protection.
Yeah.
It's like buying them enough time to figure out what they want to do with the home.
Yeah.
So how I build the value there is you already pretty much told me what the situation is, and I try to get them to paint that picture of what does that actually look like when something happens. That's why I ask the questions the way I do.
Yeah.
Like, what happened when we lose your income, when they have the house, like already just kind of painting the image in the future.
Yeah.
And so once they tell me all those things, I use it to build the value with equity protection. So let's say, those are a few good questions. And then at the end, you pretty much tell me everything. So I'll repeat it back to you and I'll just be like, hey, Ryan, just to make sure that I understand your situation correctly, and I'll just repeat everything they said. And it sounds like you have this much left on your mortgage, you're paying this much, and it's going to go to, your son, but you're not sure if he's going to keep it, if he's going to sell it. It's kind of up to them at that point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So I'm going to look at a couple different options. Like I said, my job is to make sure, one, that you qualify, and two, that it's going to be comfortable and affordable, okay?
Okay.
And then I'll come together, I'll get a few different options, and then I'll just say, hey, has anyone ever explained to you how equity protection works?
No, nobody has, no.
Okay. So what it is it's going to be a more practical and a more affordable approach to protect the mortgage, okay? Because quite frankly, if something happens to you, Ryan, the bank does not need the full home paid off, but they do need to make sure they're getting their payments each month, okay? So what we'll look at is an equity protection plan, and it's going to cover anywhere from a year to 2 years or 3 years of those payments to make sure that when something happens to you, your kids are going to have at least a year, 2 years, 3 years where they can figure it out, discuss with each other, and decide who's going to live in the home, if they're going to sell the home, if they're going to keep the home, rent it out. Whatever they're going to do, they're going to have enough time to figure that out without having to worry about the actual payment. Okay? So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Okay. So I'm kind of like using their situation to build the value there. So I'm saying like, they're going to figure it out. They're going to talk it over. The siblings are going to decide because essentially that's what you told me.
Yeah.
And so I'm making it make sense for them. And I think they can just see the value of it way more when they know that like their situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you doing when you get to the end? Because you said you used to get, I want to think about it like 95% of the time. What are you doing when you get to the end and they do say, because on a digital lead, you don't necessarily have the same, because on age leads, we're like, hey, you have to apply or decline or whatever.
Yeah.
So on a digital lead, they say, I want to think about it. What are you saying?
It's really tough, man, because every situation's different. It's really tough because when I need to think about it, I immediately think I missed something.
Yeah.
I missed something a while ago that like should have been covered, and we weren't on the same page. And so it's hard to kind of revert and go back to it, but that's what I have to do every time is I have to revert and figure out like, hey, where does this not make sense to them before I go forward with it, because what I'm not gonna do is I'm not gonna just submit the application if they don't understand.
Yeah.
But it's really hard. It means I didn't do my job correctly, or I missed something, or we're not on the same page. It could be the price, it could be the value, it could be anything. But I need to think about it. It's not like a one-liner where you can just, oh yeah, we need, the insurance company needs to think about it too. Let's just send in a request. Like, it's the value's still not there. There's still something missing. There's still a disconnect. So if they tell me I need to think about it, I'm trying to just dig deeper and figure out what that is.
Okay.
So asking more questions like, hey, okay, that makes sense. And is it more like the price, or just kind of seeing if we, do need this, figuring out what they say then, and then reverting back to their situation.
Okay, makes sense. So, what do you think are like one or two of the biggest things that like a lot of new agents, like if I'm on here and I'm listening and I am getting a lot of people saying I want to think about it, what do you think are the most common pieces that like new agents are missing or doing wrong?
Well, I think I know exactly, because I have a lot of new agents that will get that. Obviously, it's the most common objection, so it makes sense. But what I've noticed with new agents is they have the script, they have the financial inventory, but they're just like too robotic with it. So they're almost just filling it out to fill it out. And they're just asking the questions to fill out the sheet. And then they're bringing it to me and they're saying, like, hey, here's what I have. And so I'm looking at the sheet, I'm seeing like how much they make, I'm seeing the mortgage balance, I'm seeing everything that the agent did to fill out the financial inventory. And then I'm asking them, what is the beneficiary going to do with the home? They're like, oh, I don't know. They might keep it. Well, I was like, did you ask? Some of those questions aren't on the sheet. So it's like, what are they going to do with the home? What is their situation like? What do they want to do with the home? What is their like ideal situation? What is the financial situation? And they miss a lot of those questions. So I think a lot of new agents I need to think about it, because they're kind of just going through the motions. They're not necessarily being super intentional about having the client kind of explain the situation. It's more of like an interview or an interrogation.
Yeah.
Where I'm just asking you questions. Okay, I asked all my questions. I'll get some options now.
Yeah.
Where in their mind, in the client's mind, they basically just gave you a ton of information, but they didn't get anything back as far as like, why would I need this? Or, that part didn't process yet.
Yeah. Makes sense, dude. And it's funny, bro, like I've done that as a veteran agent in a different way, because you know how big I am on like tracking numbers and like all that stuff. Like, but it got to a point not this past summer, the summer before that, where I had a period of about a month and a half where I was just closing at an abysmal rate. Like I'm like a lifetime 62% closer. So for me to have been closing at like 30% was just wild. Like, and it was long enough. Like, there's a difference. You can have a bad week. Don't freak out about a bad week, especially if you're a vet.
Yeah.
It was a month and a half of like a 30% closing ratio.
Yeah.
And normally I don't freak out. Like, I'm like, whatever, like it'll come back, but it wasn't coming back. Like, I was like, dude, like something's wrong. And I was like, my checklist I always go through is, okay, am I saying anything differently? The answer was no. It's like, okay, am I working a different type of lead? The answer was no. I'm like, okay. Like, so what is it? Because I'm not doing anything differently. I'm not saying anything differently. I'm not working any different type of leads. And what I learned, what I was doing is the same thing that new agents do, where they're like not, they're just going through a checklist. I started doing the same thing. Like, I was viewing everybody as a number. I was like, hey, I just got to get 5 presentations today. I got to book 20 appointments. I got to do this. And I was like, I'm not lying. Like, I was playing games on my phone, like mid-presentation, like going through the financial inventory, like playing Brawl Stars or whatever, like playing games. And I wasn't like locked in. So that's not just a danger for new agents. That's a danger for everybody. Once you take the focus off of the client, it's really hard to connect and have that emotional connection and draw out those emotions if you're not emotionally into the appointment. So it doesn't matter what level you're at, if you're a beginner or you've been here a while, that emotion is probably the most pivotal part of the sale.
Yeah. I love relating things back to sports, because I feel like a lot of people can agree and like it makes sense. And so I always say like Ryan, did you play any sports? Like, what sport did you play?
Basketball and football in high school, yeah.
Okay. So basketball, football, you probably, especially like a high school game, you probably had like a lot of people in the stands, right? Like there was maybe a few hundred, maybe a few thousand sometimes. So when you're in the game though, it's like you kind of drown out all the noise. Like there's all these people cheering, yelling, going crazy. But like in the big games, you're just focused on the game. And like you're not thinking about the fans, you're not thinking about anything else, but like you're so focused. And I relate that to like a presentation. So I used to do the same exact thing. Like, I'd be in a presentation, and then sometimes I'd just be like falling asleep. I'm just like bored, or like, I'm just not there mentally. And I've noticed that that has a huge effect on the presentation itself. So I treat it like a game now, where it's like a sporting game.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like when I'm in the presentation, there's one focus, and then like nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And emotionally, mentally, physically, everything, I'm just locked in on the presentation and that client. So I like to relate it back to sports in that way.
Dude, that's awesome. Well, Gabe, seriously, I appreciate you coming on, giving us some of your time. I think that people are going to learn a lot from you. Dude, I seriously think that you're one of the guys that pretty quickly, like, everybody's going to know your name, especially once you hit 80K here.
I'm working on it,
So
bro.
we'll check in. But real quick, tell everybody what you spent in November so far on leads.
Probably like 6,000 or 7,000 so far.
And today's date, this probably won't drop for a couple weeks, but today's date is November 7th. So 1 weekend, and you spent how much?
About probably 6 or 7.
6 or 7. That's
but
crazy.
I mean, one of them was October 31st.
Yeah.
But it was for like
well,
November's
yeah, the leads are going to come in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's kind of scary, but.
Yeah, wait, when you're shooting for big numbers, you got to spend big. But appreciate you, Gabe.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate you. Thank you.